hopefully those Thursday and Friday games did not interfere with your digestion of your Thanksgiving dinner. But I know for many of you, it caused some upset stomachs. We had, speaking of upsets, all upsets on Thursday and Friday in those games in the NFL. Of course, none of the favorites able to get home and win. Chaos over in the Circa and Grandissimo pools. I am Statsational. Welcome, as always, to the channel and the show that brings you some of the most in-depth analysis anywhere you're going to find on YouTube. This is Scratchin and Survivin, of course, brought to you on the Sharp app channel. Guys, check out sharp.app, use code SURVIVE, and you'll be able to get a good discount if you are into sports betting, arbitrage betting for sure. We got maybe one of the best arbitrage tools. I like to think it is the best arbitrage tool in the market. If you're unfamiliar with that, that's where you can bet on both sides of some props or games, depending on the sports books that you have. Sometimes they price it in a way in which both sides become profitable no matter which side wins. We just had one of our subscribers, he posted in our Discord, he had over $9,000 made last month just on arbitrage betting. So there are some of you out there doing really, really well with the tool, and I urge you guys to check that out. All right, back to Survivor. Crazy week, at least crazy on the Thanksgiving and Black Friday when none of the favorites were able to get home. In Circa, one of the rules there, you have to pick the Thursday or Friday game during the Thanksgiving week, and then you have to do the same for Christmas. You have to pick the Christmas Day games separate as a separate week. So it was considered week 13A for them, and then 13B was the Sunday and Monday night games. In that pool, we started with 900 people, and 800. They lost about 850 some odd people. I think they were down to 49 people after the games finished on Friday night. So the majority, about 80 some odd percent, were on either Philadelphia or Baltimore. Makes sense in the fact that obviously those were the two biggest favorites. People were kind of holding those two teams in the hopes to be able to take them. You don't have obviously many options, only 4 games. You want to take a favorite for the most part. I didn't like and I know it's a strategy, and those who obviously are alive, they went with the strategy of taking an underdog and hoping, of course, that the favorites would lose and something similar like this would happen. I don't think anyone could have imagined all of the favorites losing. I just did the math on that. It was about a 1% chance that all of those 4 favorites would lose on those games on Thursday and Friday. So there were some people who took Green Bay, some people who took Dallas, some people took Chicago, and some took Cincinnati. And of course, the theory behind that is it's because so many are going to be on the favorites. If, of course, if they lose, you're going to get down to a situation where we knock a ton of people out. The reason I didn't like it last week for Circa was the fact that you had 2 big favorites. If it was going to be 80% of the pool on, let's say, Philadelphia, that became a much stronger play. But the fact that it was kind of split, it was more on Philly than it was Baltimore, but the fact that it was split, I didn't feel like gave us as much leverage to do that. But, just because it happens and it works out for them, I still don't think it was the right play. And I think it's going to be an even worse play next year, because we're going to come down to a similar situation. And because it worked so well this year, you're going to see more and more people do it. The fact that someone won, I think I mentioned this on the show many times, someone won a few years ago when it was a much smaller pool. They won it on Thanksgiving doing just that. Everyone saved saved whatever team it was. I think it might have been Kansas City. I forget now. They saved that team. This person took a gamble, went against that team, figuring, hey, if the dog wins this game and I'm the only one on it, I'm going to win the entire pool. And that's exactly what happened. And then because of that, it kind of woke a lot of people up to that strategy. So you saw this week, we still had 49 people all take different dogs in of the 4 games. They kind of were split up among the 4. And next year, I would anticipate that number goes even higher as people see the success that it had this season. So the more people that do it, of course, the worse a play it becomes. Similar to what we're going to see here this week. Tampa is going to be a massive choice here this week, and you're going to see in your pool, when we talk about the threshold column, might as well do that now. Let's bring up my spreadsheet. And for those of you new, this is just a spreadsheet that I built a couple of years ago just for my own just for myself in my pools, because I have so many pools, and it just gives me an idea where I should be looking um, as far as making my picks for the pool. And I know a lot of you who have been watching the show really enjoy the spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet becomes less and less important as the season goes on. But the one part of the spreadsheet that does remain important is the threshold column. As a matter of fact, it becomes even more important as we get deeper into your pool. And many of you now are getting to the point where you've got 20, 15, 10 people less. Some even, I've been answering questions where some of you guys are heads up in a pool. And I'm looking forward to finding out how you guys did in the heads up situations last week. And if any of you won and you're watching this now, please let me know down in the comments. I love it when you guys win the pool. That's what this is all about. We're not exactly, we don't do this to make any money. The show doesn't generate a lot of revenue. That's for sure. We do it, or I do it at least, because I know you guys enjoy it. So I love bringing the show to you guys. As long as you continue to enjoy it, I will do more shows. If you guys have any suggestions, actually, speaking of that, anything sports betting related that you want me to cover, I'd be happy to do some shows like that for you guys. We do a ton of shows. You get on YouTube, and it's like sometimes you get a show or you do a video and it hits. Sometimes you do one, nobody wants to watch it. It's hard to kind of figure sometimes. So if you guys have something of interest to you, a topic that you think you'd like me to cover, by all means, let me know down in the comments, and I'd be happy to do so. All right, so you see this week we've got a massive amount of people will be on Tampa. Why is that? Well, they're the biggest favorite of the week, slightly over Denver, and almost everyone in most pools can still take Tampa. So at this point in the season, when you've got a lot of people have taken Denver and the Rams and Seattle and Green Bay, all these teams that are 70+% chance to win, Buffalo as well, most of the people are going to wind up on Tampa. So you're probably in that situation where Tampa looks like the best option for you. Now, if you are in a small pool or even a large pool, and again, guys, it's getting to the point where small pools, large pools, we're going to be fairly similar in our picks here, because we're at the point where we're just trying to get the optimal path. We've got week 14, 15, 16, 17, and 18. You got 5 weeks left. You want to start looking at what you've got left and what's my most optimal path. I just want to survive at this point. I've made it here to week 14. I'm trying to survive. I want to do so optimally. That doesn't mean we can't use some game theory, especially when we get down to very few people in the pool. Or if we're in just a massively large pool, or we're in a double picks pool, we may have to pick a little bit differently, because now we've got just so many picks. I got knocked out in my pool, both entries in my double pick pool. I was down to 36 people. I had 2 entries in the double pick pool. Could kind of kick myself a little bit on one of them. I planned on saving New England for last week, and I wound up trying to make a leverage play the week prior, and I took New England as opposed to taking San Francisco, which was my original plan, hoping maybe we can get a San Francisco loss. That did not happen, and I said, well, New England is just about the same favorite as a bunch of other teams that I had the ability to take, one of them being Philadelphia, and of course, Philadelphia goes down, New England wins. Otherwise, I'd still be alive, at least with one entry in that pool. But that's the way it goes. I still have one entry. Again, I've got the Rams in a great situation last week as a high leverage play. Not a lot of people could take the Rams, which is why not a lot of people got knocked out over the weekend. And I get the Rams with one of my entries in the DraftKings going for the million. Rams lose. My other entry was the Chargers, which was where everyone was at. And they do advance. That's why I suggested to a lot of you, if you're in this situation, you're going to be possibly in that situation this week with Tampa. If you got multiple picks, you want to throw one of them on the pick like Tampa here. It's almost your hedge against, right? So, your hedge would be, you can look at it both ways. But if I take the chalkier pick, I call it counterfeiting. You're going to counterfeit the rest of the market. But then let's say you've got Denver or the Rams or Seattle or Green Bay or Buffalo, one of those teams available to you, and you want to split it up. So you go ahead and let's say you've got the Rams. You take the Rams this week with one, and let's say you have an option. You got one pool you can take Denver, one pool you can take the Rams. Now, I'm more than fine taking both of those. It's going to be rare that you have both of those left, taking both of them and leveraging against the field. But let's say it was more like You've got the Rams, but then you've got Cleveland, which is going to be a popular pick, which everyone's going to have Cleveland available. I may just want to take Tampa and the Rams. I'm already getting a high leverage. I'm already in a high leverage situation here with the Rams. So I'm going to go ahead and take the Rams and then kind of counterfeit everybody and take Tampa. Doesn't mean it's the right play. You know, if you have the ability to take both of your entries that are strong here, Denver and the Rams, Denver and Seattle, whatever it may be, I think taking both of those teams against and fading Tampa is totally justified as well. We'll talk about your individual pools. I don't want to get too deep in the woods on scenarios that probably aren't going to happen for most of you, but let's just talk about Tampa in particular here this week. If you are in a pool of any size, this threshold column is going to tell you what is based on how many people are picking that team, what's the lowest number I could take, the lowest win probability on a team I could take and be justified in doing so. Well, you see, if 60% of your pool takes Tampa, you could basically take almost every favorite on the board. I mean, at this point, 59% and up, that would be, even throw Philly in there, like from Philadelphia on up here, you'd be justified in taking. So this is just a good guide. It's not, it's not a hard and fast number, but it's a good guide to let you know. You also see, again, I keep forgetting to label this column, but I threw this in there after Carolina a few weeks ago lost, and they were, if you remember, 9%. We had 9% last week with the Chargers. What this number is just simply stating is what's the probability that this team loses, right? So in this case, about 21% chance that Tampa loses, and you're multiplying that by the probability of the amount of pick percentage, right? And so the higher this number goes and the lower this number is, the higher this number becomes, right? So the lower the win probability, this number increases. The higher the pick percentage, this number increases. Very similar to how threshold works. But this is the highest number we've seen, 13%. So what that's telling you is if there was 100 people in your pool, we could expect 13 to get eliminated on this Tampa pick. So between the threshold column and this column here, it's really just telling you fading Tampa, not the worst play here. It's actually a very strong play because you've got so many people on them. Now, what I hate is when it's the biggest favorite of the week is also the team that's being picked the most. Ideally, we get ourselves in situations like we did when the Carolina was in this situation. Now, Carolina was only 30% of entries were taking it. But when you get a team, if Cleveland were that team this week, if Cleveland were getting, let's say, 40% of picks, you'd be at a similar 13% number. The threshold would be 4% lower than where Tampa is. But boy, I'd rather be in that situation than fading the number one team as far as win probability goes, right, for the week. So not as strong as if it was a weaker team, but still keep in mind that is that's the threshold column here. So if you've got few people left in your pool, if you think all of them, and it's a very good chance if you got 5 people left in your pool, all of them may want to go on Tampa, you are going to be justified here if you have a strong option to take another team. Now, again, I never mind go ahead and getting on the team that is like a team like Tampa. I don't mind getting on it if you're unsure. I'd rather play it safe, get on the team that's more likely to win. I advised a lot of you last week to do that with the Chargers, where it was going to be close. You might as well just go ahead and take the Chargers because you didn't have an option. You didn't have another option with them, really. You didn't have the probability of you taking them in a future date was slim, right? So if you've got a team where let's head over to the Survivor Grid and let's start looking at that and what the future looks like for some of these teams. Tampa. Now, next week against Atlanta, decent spot, right? They'll be a favorite in that game for sure. But none of the games that they have remaining, Atlanta, at Carolina, at Miami, and home for Carolina, none of those games are they going to be as big a favorite as they are this week against New Orleans. And this Atlanta one, actually, let's look. I did look at this. I'm going to look over on the Sharp app, and we've got future lines here. We've got the lines depending on some sportsbooks don't post a line for future weeks, but some do. And we can look. I'm going to look on the website, but I believe they have about a 69% chance when I looked at it earlier. So about a 69% chance that they win, at least the market probability for the game against Atlanta, which of course is a little bit less, significantly less, I guess about 10% less than their probability of winning the game this week against New Orleans. So are you willing to sacrifice that to take them next week and then go ahead and fade them against the market? It's really going to depend on what your other options are in week 15. Let's assume you don't have Philly. Let's assume you don't have San Francisco, right? You might have Jacksonville available to you. You might have Dallas available to you. You know, if you have some of these teams, you really got to start mapping it out. First thing I would do is map out the probabilities and see what the optimal path is. So obviously, if I've got Tampa, the optimal path is going to be to take Tampa. And then who's the team that I take if I take Tampa this week, next week? And I'd want to do that at least for the next 3 weeks and then figure out what my optimal is. Then say, okay, if I go ahead and fade Tampa, now if I fade Tampa with the Rams, okay, I'm not really changing all that much. If I have the Rams available to me and I go ahead and take the Rams this week, and then next week I take Tampa because I don't have Philly, I don't have San Francisco, I don't have Jacksonville, I don't, right? If I'm doing it and saving Tampa, or I do have one of these teams and I'm just going to not play Tampa maybe until the last week against Carolina, which doesn't look like the greatest of games with Carolina playing a lot better, but perhaps that's the move that you're going to make. And if you're in a really small pool, you may never get to week 18 anyway. You've got to now look, maybe Chicago's a team that you have. Look on the Sharp, go to Sharp app, and at least you'll be able to see next week's games. Let's see, I'll bring it up for you guys. Let me bring up the Sharp app so you guys could see it. So you'll be able to look at next. I just have like Pinnacle and Caesars, DraftKings, but you could put a ton of sports books in here. Basically every sports book you can add to your screen. And these are just the money lines because it's going to be a whole lot easier to calculate. But if we look at, let's see, what team were we talking about? Chicago, Cleveland. So right now, Chicago is about, we could do the numbers here. Let's just call them a 375. What's the midpoint here? I'm just kind of doing it in my head, but let's say it's 375. So at 375, you would have, to do the math, by the way, to convert the American odds into a probability. If you're a favorite minus 375, you would just take 375, divide that by 375 plus 100, which is 475, and that gives you 78.9%. And if you're looking to do that for an underdog, right? So if they were plus 375, you would do 100 divided by the 375 plus 475, all right? And that comes out to 21%. So if you do both sides, of course, they should equal 100%. So if they're about a 375, the Chicago, they've got about a 78, 79% chance to win their game next week. All right, let's go back to Survivor Grid. And we'll see. All right, so if you had Chicago as a 78-ish% chance, 79-ish% chance to win their game next week, you got to be careful with Survivor Grid. I'm not sure where they get their future lines from, but they're not always going to be accurate. What I just showed you there from Sharp app is the actual market. You can actually bet those lines right now over at those particular sports books, right? So Pinnacle won't have their line out until Sunday night, but for some of the other sports books, you can put a bet on Week 15's game. So it gives us a good idea. And those lines may change. You get an injury this weekend. Chicago looks bad, or whoever the teams are, you get the idea. All right, so that's what I want you guys to do, is kind of map that out. So if Chicago was that team, you go, okay, I've got 79% chance. I'm going to take Tampa this week. So all you're going to do is multiply. Let's say Tampa's got 79% chance to win, and then I've got Chicago next week at a 79% chance to win. Well, I have a 62% chance to survive Week 14 and 15 taking those two teams. Now, if I flip and I say, all right, I want to fade Tampa this week, I don't want to take them. So many people are going to be on them in my pool, and I'm going to drop down. I don't have the Rams. I don't have Denver. I don't have Seattle. Well, I'm going to go down to Cleveland, which a lot of people are taking, for the reason that obviously this is the last time you're going to have Cleveland as a favorite. Tennessee obviously has been one of the worst teams, probably the worst team in the league. So people are taking a shot on Cleveland. Now, on my spreadsheet, what do I have Cleveland at? I've got them as a 67% chance to win. So you're going to multiply the 67% chance, right? And now let's say that you don't have, you don't have one of these strong options for Week 15. You've used Philly, you used San Francisco. Perhaps you have Jacksonville, right? Let's just say you have Jacksonville available to you. So let's go back to, I won't bring it up on the screen, but I'll go back to the Sharp app here and look for that Jacksonville game. So Jacksonville looks to be, if you look on FanDuel, they're minus 560 plus 420 for the Jets. So if we do that, you've got, we'll take the mid. Caesars is right in the middle. So let's take that. So you've got 530 and 390. I just take the midpoint there, is 460, right? So now we do the math on 460. You've got 460 divided by 560. They've got an 82% chance, Jacksonville, they're saying, to beat the Jets. So now I'm going to take Cleveland this week and forego taking Tampa, and I'm going to wind up with Cleveland at, what I say, 67%, and I'm going to multiply that by the 82% chance, and I've got a 55% chance, right? So if that's my line, I've got a 55% chance of surviving. But perhaps the whole reason we were doing this, and I should really look at it from the perspective of, I'm going to take Tampa next week, and I don't have any of these teams available to you. Well, obviously that's going to be a much more significant drop. And like I said, I think it's a 69% chance on Tampa that they're projecting here in the market for next week's game. So if you wind up taking a team like Cleveland this week at a 67% chance, and then you've got a 69% chance on Tampa next week, you've only got a 46% chance of advancing. So you just want to use those numbers, do the calculations yourself to figure out, is it worth maybe getting off of a Tampa? What's my line here for the rest of the way? And perhaps you do have one of these teams available to you in Week 15. Let's see what Week 16 looks like. Kansas City, a lot of you have probably taken. Houston, earlier in the year, I took Houston in Week 4 with every one of my picks in a double pick week, so they were very popular there. In a couple of other weeks, they've been popular. But if you have them available, going to be a pretty strong play here in Week 16. Buffalo, cannot have too many people with Buffalo left. Philly, similar. A lot of people have taken them at this point. Detroit, all of these teams have been taken quite a bit. So do you want to really take Tampa down at Carolina? Probably not. So really pay attention here to Week 16 to make sure you do have some options before you make any odd picks in Week 14 or any against the grain picks. So you really want to at least look out to Week 16. But at this point in the season, I think starting to look the entire way can be beneficial. So what we're seeing this week, obviously Tampa as one of the stronger picks. I think if you have the Rams, Denver, Seattle, if you've got one of these teams, it's almost certain I'd want to take them as a high leverage play in all formats. Rams, what do they have left? Now, they've got some games that they're going to be favored in. At Atlanta, they should be a pretty decent favorite in that game, and certainly home for Arizona, assuming that game means something. We never know in Week 18, right? But if the pool's getting down to a small amount, for sure, and I have the Rams available to me, I'm most definitely, if I'm less than 20 people, it's assured I'm taking the Rams. I'm probably the only one who could do it, and I'm going to do that in that scenario. If I'm in a larger pool, perhaps I want to get on Tampa, but it's going to be tough for me in any format to really get off. If I had the Rams, Denver, if I had one of these teams or Seattle, I'm going to take them. Denver, not too many options here after this week. Green Bay, you don't like it. Jacksonville, can't love it. At Kansas City, and then the Chargers. None of these games are going to be hugely popular. Denver, for sure, if you have them available to you, I think you take them this week. Seattle, Not a lot of great choices either. They're at Atlanta this week. That's probably going to be their biggest favorite. That they're going to be the biggest favorite. They'll be the rest of the way. Indianapolis at home. You get the Rams at home, at Carolina, which is getting stronger and stronger each week, and then at San Francisco. So if you have Seattle, similar situation, I would definitely take them this week, and then fade that Tampa pick. The way I'm looking at it, Green Bay, do they have many more options? Chicago this week. I mean, Chicago's the number one team right now in the NFC, and not getting a ton of respect. Really not deserved. If you look at my models, I've got these lines pretty similar, but they're winning games. Right at Denver, you can't love it. At Chicago, you'd certainly like them. At home, much better. Baltimore at home. Baltimore hasn't played well, but I don't love that game. Baltimore still in most models ahead of Chicago. And at Minnesota, who knows? That could be a game that's better than home against Chicago. We shall see. But I'm not afraid here in taking any of these teams now as a play to get off of Tampa. Really not. But most of you are not going to have that. So do I want to get on Tampa? Perhaps. Cleveland, we talked about it. This is the second most picked team. If I was in an extremely large pool or I'm in a double picks pool, I think Cleveland makes a lot of sense. Certainly in a double picks pool where you don't have all that many options. Again, try to map it out, but I think Cleveland in a double picks pool is almost assuredly a team. It was like Miami last week. We kind of had to take Miami last week in double pick pools because you weren't going to use Miami ever again. You may need that situation here with Cleveland taking one of the worst teams in the league, but being able to open it up maybe in future weeks if you've got multiple double pick weeks coming for you, or this week is a double pick week, Cleveland's going to become a much stronger option. A lot of people are going to take them. Matter of fact, Miami last week, I believe, was the most picked team in my pool after the Chargers because of the fact that in a double pick week, Miami was, you needed them. We had double picks in that pool for week 13, 15, 16. So you can understand taking a team like that. All right, so really, that's really what I want to get across to you guys. There's not a great Monday night or Sunday night matchup for Survivor. Typically, we like to do that if we can in hedging situations, but we don't have great options this week on those games. What are the games? It's a couple of, they're good games, I believe. Yeah, you got Houston and Kansas City, and then Philly at the Chargers. So good games to watch, not necessarily great games for Survivor. If we can get the later the game we get, like last week, if those of you were able to take New England on the Monday night game and you were able to watch all of the other games finish, you might have been in a situation where you could have been the sole person on New England, have a great hedging opportunity. So we like to do that if we can. We don't want to force it, but if we can take the later game for hedging purposes, it is an advantage. All right, as always, guys, I appreciate you all being here. I hope you all enjoyed your Thanksgiving, and leave your comments as you always do. I'm happy to answer them for you. And again, leave a comment if you've got anything sports betting related that you want me to go over. I'm actually writing a book right now on prop betting, and the first 11 chapters are done. There's a lot, well, done at least writing wise. There's a lot that goes into prop betting. My NBA props over here at the Sharp app have been really, really strong. It's getting harder and harder to win, betting the NBA or betting the NFL as far as the sides and the totals. The markets are highly liquid, really tough to beat those. But props, you can certainly still beat props. So hopefully I'll get that book out to you guys within the next few months. And I'm looking forward to finishing it. That is for sure. But I think it'll help you guys a lot with your prop betting. And we're going to go into, it goes into, I'm trying to make it to the point where if you're not heavily into the math, you'll still get something out of the book. But if you are looking to dig deep into the math, there'll be a lot of good math in there for you, stuff that you could use Excel for to help you out. I'm going to have Excel formulas in there, hopefully to kind of guide you guys on how to do these calculations. But if you don't want to do a lot of these calculations yourself, you sign up to the Sharp app. I give out a lot of my props, but we've got something called the Proptimizer in there. It gives you what our model, it's not my personal model, we've got various models. Some of the best models out in the industry are part of the app, and it'll let you know what the edges are. A lot of the math I've done is just on calculating the edges. Unfortunately, it's sad to announce one of my partners and lead developer on this app, the guy pretty much had his hand in every aspect of the app, passed away on Saturday. Very unexpected. He was, I believe, 36 years old. He's got a family. and unfortunately had a heart attack and passed over the weekend. And it's still been tough for us here at the Sharp app to deal with. Very sad for him and his family, but we're going to continue to hopefully press on with the app. I know he pretty much has dedicated the last 4 or 5 years of his life to this app, and so I'm going to hopefully assist in just getting the app to where he wanted it to be. So to our buddy Ray and partner, we will miss you. Rest in peace. Prayers out to his family and friends. And sorry to end it on a sad note, but I just wanted to acknowledge Ray and all the work that he has done for us here at the Sharp app. All right, guys. Good luck with your picks this week, and hopefully I will see you next week on another episode of Scratchin and Survivin.